2.5 million people in the US living with limb loss. We have 100,000 prosthetic legs sold every year in the US. The cost of a prosthesis is on the order of a cost of a car. So imagine you buy a car without trying any other cars and you don't like it. It's unthinkable that you wouldn't have that opportunity to try different options and that you wouldn't have the opportunity to return it.
Josh Caputo founded Humotech to solve a prominent prosthetic problem, finding a fit. Since insurance only typically reimburses a prosthetic once every 3 to 5 years, getting it right the first time is critical. Josh invented a robotic system that lets patients actually test drive different feet before they commit.
Kind of like going into a shoe store and trialing different shoes. They use our technology to try different feet.
But beyond the mechanics, he's fighting to rewrite a narrative usually considered the end of the road.
Amputation is seen as kind of a failure of the whole system. For us, well, that's just the beginning. Many people with limb loss, they wake up and they realize they need to make some changes. So we're all about empowering them to be more mobile, whatever that means for them to achieve their goals. That just gives me a strong sense of purpose when I wake up. And that's every engineer's dream, I think. I feel very lucky.
So this is from Cinderlands. We feature them a lot. The Lil Cinder, cheers to you for joining me.
Hey, thanks.
I see this mission-driven story from the outside, and I got to wonder, where does that start? Did you know anybody who needed prosthesis growing up? Where did the spark come for starting what became the business?
No, I didn't know anyone. I was just very technically curious in the beginning. I was an engineer at Carnegie Mellon, and I just loved mechanisms and control systems. I really liked to understand how machines worked.
Where did that come from even?
I don't know. Playing in the sandbox.
Okay.
I'm a simple person.
Okay. Well, see, it's a simple story, but it gets very complicated very quickly. That's why I got to ask.
Yes, it does, as things tend to do at Carnegie Mellon University.
Right.
Robotics were going into all sorts of dull, dirty, dangerous tasks, and I wanted to sample every flavor I could. So Pittsburgh was a good town for that. I serendipitously met a new professor who was starting up a wearable robotics lab. And I had never thought of that topic before. I did an internship at NASA with a legged robot. So I had some...
Is that just a robot with legs?
Essentially.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Long story for another time. Okay. All right.
Yeah, so I had thought a little bit about legs, but not really like robots that you would wear.
Right.
That was a cool concept.
Yeah.
And my mission was to develop a robotic foot, a prosthesis with power that helped make it easier to walk for people with lower limb amputations. As I dove into the research and I started to meet the people who actually use prosthetics and the clinical practitioners who deal with this technology, I realized this is a difficult business. Both in terms of the mechanical engineering, but also in terms of the the economics of prosthetics. And I started to think less about the design of the device and more about the decision-making processes that go on in these clinics. That was sort of my aha moment where I realized I had something new to offer to the world.
Even though it ended up in prosthesis, it sounded like you started there talking about the autonomous Humvees and things. Had you initially thought that your interest in mechanics might lead you down that road, something like defense-driven or space-driven as opposed to this? How exactly did it get down to the foot?
You wouldn't start there if you did a top-down analysis of potential markets for robotics.
Right.
But there are 2.5 million people in the US living with limb loss, and 40 million people that have some sort of major difficulty with ambulation walking. Amputation is seen as kind of a failure of the whole system. It's like I said, the end of the road. You're losing a limb. And for us, well, that's just the beginning. It's an opportunity to do better. And many people with limb loss they wake up and they realize they need to make some changes. So we're all about empowering them to be more mobile, whatever that means for them to achieve their goals. And we want to support them in making informed choices.
This next one's called The Pink Nightmare.
Very romantic sounding.
Right, very romantic sounding. Well, cheers to this romance between you and finding Humotech. It might have felt a bit like a breakup, getting from that phase to like finding like the real world job. Like, how am I going to turn this idea and attacking this problem into money? That's the entrepreneur's dilemma. But you have a specific moment where you were talking about this world, making a presentation, and somebody came right up to you and said, "Can you do that for me, like right now?"
Yeah.
That doesn't happen to too many people. Can you talk about that story? Because it seems like that's really where this kicked off. It turned from inspiration and the curiosity. And this sounds like the spark moment to me, but would you mind telling me that story?
Sure. So we just earlier talked about, the clinical problems that we're tackling at Humotech today. And these are ideas we were developing in the beginning, applying for grants, translational funding. Every grant I wrote was rejected.
I think a lot of people can relate to that kind of thing. Like your first few swings, whether it be cold calls in sales or grant responses or things like that. I get it. That part of the story, well familiar with.
Yeah.
But nonetheless,
stick-to-itiveness, is so necessary. That spark of a moment happened, during one of those months of wondering what I was going to do. And I realized we have a customer base within this academic research kind of environment. The technology that I had built in the lab could be a model for other researchers. They could use these type of devices and save a lot of time, effort, cost, headache, and having to build their own wearable robotic systems. So the practicality of how we started the business was serving researchers. But the North Star, the vision all along, was this clinical use case. And so this really cool opportunity presented itself where we could provide the device, they could do the human movement research. That was sort of the first collaboration, which we've now replicated many times. We've done over 50 projects in this field, looking at different aspects of human locomotion with devices. And they all kind of follow this model of Humotech providing the hardware, the software, the support services to make the device work. And then our customers, they provide the sort of research questions. They conduct the studies, and improve the state of the science. After all this research, we've begun piloting in real-world clinics our prosthetic foot emulator solution. So patients with limb loss, they can come in and use our robotic system to trial different foot options, kind of like going into a shoe store and trialing different shoes.
Right, of course, yeah.
They use our technology to try different feet. Because it's too impractical to have shelves full of feet.
Right. Yes.
A lot of cost, a lot of space,
right.
A lot of time involved. We're going to be launching that new business model this year in a big way. So stay tuned.
So you're telling me that this is kind of like a shoe store, or like I think about if I'm getting like my eyeglasses tested, I don't need them, but if like I need to get there's a bunch of tests that go into that. Right?
Yeah.
How good or bad are your eyes? And if this lens is going to be a little different from that lens and all that. That doesn't happen today in prosthetics?
No, it does not.
What the hell? It feels like that's naturally, because like you just said, it's like wearing a shoe. You need to make sure it's the right fit. That feels a little underserving for those people.
Yeah, and we're oversimplifying things a little bit here.
Right.
But
I'm a simple guy.
This is the basic problem, and the cost of a prosthesis is on the order of a cost of a car. So imagine you buy a car without trying any other cars.
Sight unseen.
And you don't like it. Like every time you get in and sit in it, you're in pain.
God, I got to do this.
Right?
I move this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It's unthinkable that you wouldn't have that opportunity to try different options and that you wouldn't have the opportunity to return it. You can't return these devices once, insurance has paid for it.
Right.
Getting this right the first time is paramount. But, there are hundreds of options. It's really hard to know what's going to work best until you've actually tried it and walked on it. So we provide this very simple capability, really, the opportunity to try different options. But the technology that enables that is quite sophisticated.
Acrospire Brewing, the double secret probation. Well, cheers to you. Let's get into some double trouble here.
I love it. These are my kind of beers.
Yeah, mine too. Right in the middle, like that 6-7 multi-hoppy. I did 6-7 without even thinking about it. That like multi-hoppy area, which isn't too like blow your head off, but which is enough to be like, yeah, there's something in this glass. You know what I mean? Now, you made a fair amount of business and have done with all of these projects, which seem to be in like the R&D world. But now you're talking about going into clinics, which seems like the next logical and good step. Is there any element to that like R&D phase which you're now redoing because you're piloting this in a whole new sphere? Like what's different about being in a clinic versus being in a lab? And how much of that process do you get to see? Because I think of the word clinic, I think of clinicians, I think of trials. I wonder how much you're actually able to see and how much you're just waiting on.
Yeah.
Help open up that world for me from your perspective.
I would say as we go towards the clinic, we're using the same core technology, but we're focused on different aspects of the design. And a lot of the innovation is happening in the business model. So, instead of selling equipment, we're now talking about selling services, which sounds like a simple distinction, but requires turning the whole business upside down.
Can you tell me the story of the first like clinic win? Like how, because breaking in, like it probably wasn't as simple as that. Hey, I made this presentation and somebody walked right up to me and be like, build that for me. I'm guessing a clinic didn't come to you like that. So how'd you even find the right place to start? Yeah,
it's been an interesting process because we've collaborated with the Department of Veteran Affairs and the Department of Defense for years, but then trying to figure out how do we make this work for the civilian sector. Towards the end of last year, we did some really successful real-world piloting with a local prosthetics clinic called Emulator, a very cool local company. And yeah, I think the aha moment with them was just plowing forward, just doing it. Finally, having the confidence to do that because our clinical trials at the VA have wrapped up, at least the first one. And, knowing that this has been validated, prepared us for prime time. So as you can probably imagine, the idea of a machine which mimics feet, it's hard to wrap your head around.
I can't even imagine how that would work.
Yeah, so we had to do a lot of work to demonstrate that this fundamentally is valid.
Right.
That Humotech's not just making this up, right?
It's not all smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, so we've had hundreds of patients now go through this process of trialing the actual feet and taking them home with them, and then trialing the feet sort of virtually with our machine, and we've shown that their responses correlate, right? So their preferences are the same whether they trial actual feet or emulated feet.
Interesting.
So, yeah. And in some cases, it's actually been more accurate because when you trial actual feet, it takes time. And people lose track of their preferences for between one thing and another. Mm-hmm. Imagine you're taste testing beers.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing this down to my level.
So you taste one beer, and then an hour later you taste another beer, and then an hour later you taste another beer.
Can't remember what the first one was
like. At the end of the day, you're like, which was your favorite? You're like, I don't know. They all kind of blurred together.
That last one seemed good. Is there a bias for the recency then in most cases when you have that happen?
There are so many biases. Yeah. related to the timing, related to novelty, related to whatever, I don't know, color it is.
Sure, right.
Right. So our process is blinded and randomized and very rapid. So with our system, you trial all these different options very quickly. And when I'm asking you, what was your preference? It's easy to answer.
Right.
Because this all happened quickly.
Well, what's quickly in this context?
Minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you can figure out like what the perfect fit is, what your preferred fit is within minutes.
Yeah. I paint a picture actually of years. So with the prosthetics, you are only eligible for reimbursement from your insurance company once every 3 to 5 years. So you receive the foot, you may do your best, make some adjustments, you get used to it. It's not until 3 to 5 years later you get to try something new.
So if you got the wrong shoe the first time, you're sort of screwed for like 3 or 5 years unless you want to do something crazy out of your own pocket.
Yeah, and you may be the kind of person where this is front of mind. Like you can't wait for that day where you get a new foot.
Yeah.
But many people kind of settle into a new paradigm.
Yeah.
And that's probably going to involve being more sedentary.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many bad health outcomes associated with a more sedentary lifestyle.
Sure.
So, we're trying to avoid that downward spiral of poor health by selecting the device that maximizes the patient's mobility.
This is the Just Filling, which is a sweet and tart cherry, just smoothie sour from Hitchhiker. I've never had this before. Are you a big fan of sours?
I'm kind of iffy on sours.
All right, well, this is going to be an iffy one then.
Everything's delicious on this show.
That's a great one. Oh, cheers. I'll drink to that for sure.
Oh, that's good. See, it's not too sour.
There you go.
Again.
No, that's, I think, the smoothie part. You see the sweet and tart.
Yeah.
They did it like an ingredient list in order of prevalence. So let's return in closing on this part of the story. Then we got some fun questions to follow up to the scale of the problem that you're solving, because these issues of sedentary lifestyles and diabetes and all of these things which may lead to limb loss, which I don't even think we counted in like the 40 or 50 million people you talked about up front, is not going away. It is only expanding, and that's too bad. But that also means that the impact that you can have is also theoretically expanding every day. From these single clinic trials and these R&D projects, where does this ultimately go for you? Could this be the standard practice in every clinic in, I guess, America or the world? I don't know. Let's start with America, where this kind of treatment is necessary. Where else does this technology work beyond prosthetics? Because, I'm sure that there are, just like the way that you went from potential defense and space application to medicine, I'm sure something else has crept in. Talk to me a little bit about the future and how that aligns with the scale of the issue that you're fighting against.
Yeah. So I'm laser focused on this prosthetic segment right now because it's a very acute need and a well-defined problem. So the numbers we talk about today are, a $2 billion prosthetic foot industry, which is part of a larger $15 billion prosthetics and orthotics industry. We have 100,000 prosthetic legs sold every year in the U.S., and they're serviced by 3,000 clinics across the U.S. So there's a healthy market there for any entrepreneur to try and tackle, and that's laying the foundation for us. That's our first use case. It's really just the beginning. The world of orthotics and bracing, which it sounds like you have some familiarity with, is actually quite large in terms of numbers, the number of devices sold. But it's a little bit of a tougher market than prosthetics because the problem's not as well defined. Prosthetics all attach to the body via a standardized interface, whereas orthotics, they need to meet the body, the form of the body, which is incredibly variable. So there's not as much consistency in how those devices are kind of designed and evaluated. But we're even thinking about non-medical devices. There's a lot of enthusiasm right now in the world of exoskeletons. So for non-medical use, there are defense applications. There's applications for firefighters and aging adults and consumers. I mean, anywhere where you can imagine a physically demanding task, an exoskeleton could potentially help. But you also have, a boom in humanoid robotics right now. You have all sorts of use cases for AI that is improving, productivity. So yeah, I think our society is at kind of just an interesting crossroads. How do we be more productive with less work, with fewer workers?
Right. It's an interesting question. But as far as the people who are in desperate need, I'm glad you're at the center.
Yeah, for me, that is my North Star, because I know someone who lost a limb, needs a limb. It's very black and white.
Yeah.
It's not a question of incremental improvements in, efficiency or profit. It's truly like life-changing. I mean, they need this. And that just gives me a strong sense of purpose when I wake up. And that's every engineer's dream, I think.
This is the double lustra from Dancing Gnome. We've had the lustra on here before, but not the double. We're having a lot of double trouble today.
Heavy duty.
As it turns out, I know.
Well, things are happening in my brain.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good. But I need people to see it. If people could do a Jimmy Neutron into your brain right now, how would they see that?
Processes are slowing down.
Yeah, exactly.
Words are slurring.
Well, this is where we speed it up, because this is the first time we're doing this on the show. I don't have a good name for it yet, but it's basically like a lightning round of questions, which aim to open your mind a little bit beyond the things that you do on a day-to-day basis and get us to know a little bit more about you as a person. Okay,
good.
And it's so new that I actually have them here in front of me. Actually, I haven't even memorized them yet. But we're gonna do this. It's gonna be a first-time shot. All right, guys. Let's see how it goes. Nothing crazy. Not meant to be answered quickly, but meant to be easy to answer. All right. So first, what gets you out of bed in the morning?
I've got to make this work for the people living with limb loss. I'm 15 years in on this journey, so now's not the time to quit.
What keeps you up at night?
I want my team to enjoy this process. Sometimes I worry I push them too hard.
Your favorite people, what's common about them?
They challenge me to think differently about the things I've assumed for years.
What is a truth in your industry that almost nobody agrees with you on?
I operate in an industry of brilliant product designers, and I am constantly trying to convince them that designing better products is not the problem. Choosing between all the products which already exist is the problem.
What is something that you believed at the beginning of your career that you now know is completely false?
Well, I didn't think it would take this long. And I think if I were to do it again, I might have made some planning choices a little bit differently. If you're planning for a sprint, that's different than planning for a marathon. So I wish I knew I was planning for a marathon.
What is the one thing you want to be remembered for that has nothing to do with our conversation here today?
Man, these are all existential. This is like a therapy session.
God, you think so?
Have you considered a career in counseling?
No, I got stopped at the medicine.
Oh boy. I think ultimately I'm just seeking to inspire people. Inspire as many people as I can by the time I croak, And there's no, I don't know, is it 100 people, 1 million people, one person? It kind of doesn't matter. I just want to leave the world a better place than when I started.
This final one's from New Trail Brewing. It's the Moonlit Peanut Butter Imperial Stout.
Sounds weird.
I'm sure that's what they all said in the boardroom when they came up with it. So here we come to the last call today. By the way, cheers. And thank you for joining me on this path on Thought Leaders. Whereas a lot of stories from the Nikes of the world start with this like Blink-esque moment of there's the light bulb. I put the rubber in the waffle iron and came up with the pattern for the bottom of a shoe. All the way to, I was deeply curious about this small area of robotics that not only led to the shoe, but led to the design of a whole new foot. What advice would you give for people who are maybe entrepreneurs, who are looking for that light bulb from the perspective of somebody who simply just took curiosity and turned it into a viable, strong, growing business?
Wonderful as social media is, the answer is probably turn off TikTok and get out in the real world.
Denzel Washington had a great answer to that when talking about acting. He basically said the exact same thing. He's like, get off your phone, get out into the real world.
Yeah, and it's going to be messy. It's going to be ugly, awkward. It's not going to happen right away. You know, it may happen 5 years later than you thought it would or you hoped it would. So I think our expectations about what it looks like, when it happens, how it happens are completely unrealistic. And yeah, if I could write a book about this someday, I guess I would, but I don't know. The idea that there's a recipe for life is ridiculous to me.
Well, for tasting a few recipes while talking about life, Josh Caputo, Humotech, thank you very much for sharing the story. Thank you for the mission, and cheers to everything that's coming down the pike for you this year.
Absolutely, thank you. I hope I inspired one person.
There you go.
That's enough for me.
If you're that one person, comment, I was inspired. Smiley face, whatever. All right. We'll see you later.
Thanks. Bye.